Living fearlessly. How do we do that in a world that's telling us to be fearful?
Mhm.
Wars, political unrest, viruses reappearing again, assassinations, economy. We're all told that either we're going to die, we're going to be broke, or we're going to be broke and die. So, how do we live fearlessly? It's not difficult. It's called living in the present and taking control of what you can control. And what you can control is you. What you do, how you react, how you think. That's how you could take control. You can't control the environment, but you could make things as easy and as comfortable for yourself as you want to. And it's all up to you. I'm Teresa Palmer. I'm a holistic cardiology nurse practitioner, and my expertise is really helping people through change, women through transformation and heart led transformation. And that's basically a lot of what holistic cardiology is all about. And I have a panelist with me today. I will let you introduce herself, and we will get started with the question of how do we live fearlessly in a fearful world? And I'll turn it over to you, Jacqueline.
Thank you so much, Teresa. And today is a marvelous day, regardless of what is going on in the world. We're gonna keep that. We're going to keep that in our heart, we'll say. I am Jacqueline L.L. Brown, Sovereign Business Authority and Leadership Architect. And, since we're talking about fear, let me say I do not teach people how to manage fear in the simple form, but I do guide and really anchor them in how to rebuild the internal architecture that causes fear when it's not governed, and how to govern their decisions, their identity, and the execution in their life so that fear doesn't take root. And to your point, Teresa, in a world overwhelmed by uncertainty, emotional overload, and constant reaction, um, I believe my work focuses on moving people from survival based behavior into sovereign self governance. And that's very important in leadership, where clarity, structure, and internal authority become stronger than the chaos that we're around. And so I thank you for this topic today. This is really good. And just to kind of jump right in, let me try to maybe provide one thought around a solution for fear, and then I'm pass it back to you. Um, if we create internal governance before all of the external consumption, I think that that would put us in a better position. Some people are emotionally consuming the world before they have governed themselves for the actual day. And if you think about it, sometimes people wake up and immediately absorb the news. They immediately absorb social media, all of the conflict and the fear based narratives before establishing their own posture for the day. One of the most powerful things I believe a person can do is create what I like to call the morning governance system. That's one of my pieces in my programs. Before touching the world, ask what energy will govern you today. Just say to yourself, what energy is going to govern me? And Teresa talks about the heart. Tap into your heart. What's going to govern you? What deserves your attention today? What does not deserve access to your nervous system? because the nervous system is definitely tying in and being affected by the fear. So, what doesn't deserve access to your nervous system? Because fear grows in unmanaged mental environments, I'll say. But remember this: sovereignty grows through intentional internal governance. And I'm going to pass it back to you, Teresa.
Yeah, I think we have to know ourselves first, and it all comes back to knowing yourself and believing in yourself.
Mhm.
It's the energy that the environment gives us, but it's also the energy that we emit out to the environment. And we can't control what goes on. There's all kinds of sensationalism, and people have different beliefs, and you can't change that. You
Mhm.
definitely can't change that. What you could do is discern for you, what is the truth? What do you want to be involved with?
Right.
How does that all play out? And I know I had a conversation. I play a lot of pickleball, as a lot of people know. And I really enjoy it. It's my exercise, it's how I get my head together sometimes. And I just find it so beneficial. And I was talking to somebody because our group is one group I play with is kind of hit or miss. People don't commit to it, but they don't not commit to it. And I was talking to a person and I said, if I know that we play on these certain days, I put the time aside to come and be on those certain days. I said, unfortunately, today only two of us showed up, so we could play a couple games ourselves. I said, but I think people, either commit or you don't commit. If you like something, you find some time to do it. And the other person, said to me, "Well, that's great that, that you schedule it in, that you want to do this for yourself, and that you have the respect for the other people because you're committing and saying you're going to show up at a certain time on a certain day to do a certain thing." And, he was the same way I was, that here were two people committed to doing something and we just did it. I said, we can't control the people around us,
Mhm.
but we can control us and we can control what we want to do and how we want to do it. If we leave it up to everybody else outside of us, then that's where the chaos comes in
Mhm.
because everybody's got a different opinion. Everybody, I mean, you look at the world today, and if you really look at it, and I'm not being negative, it's really a mess. There's so much going on. And with social media, with news outlets,
Mhm.
it seems like they take these things that are going on and they blow it so far out of proportion that you can't help but get scared about it, get
Mhm.
frightened, be fearful. So, what do? You come back to yourself. The first thing you do is be in the present moment. Okay. What am I feeling right now? Do I have a reason to be fearful? If my house is on fire, if somebody's holding a gun to me, I have a reason to be fearful. And that's not an overreaction. That's okay, get the adrenaline going and get out. But most of our fear, 99.9% of our fear, is fear of the future, of what could happen,
Mhm.
what could go wrong, what could happen to me. And that's where we get stuck. So when you live in the present, you're looking at your life right here and right now. What am I doing? You know, am I in danger?
Mhm.
If the answer is no, if you're not in immediate danger, then what you do is you take a deep breath. That right away quiets the nervous system. And you place your hand over your heart. Because if you could live in a state of more calm, of inner knowing, your nervous system will follow that. There's
Mhm.
so many things out there now talking about the nervous system. everything from tapping to breathing to doing this to doing that. And yes, they're all helpful. But if you start with yourself first and start with that connection to your heart, your inner knowing, your inner wisdom, you're already 3 steps ahead of everything else because your nervous system now is calm and you don't have to have a hyped up nervous system that now you're trying to calm down with a technique. Techniques are great, but again, everything starts inside of us. And the first thing to do when you wake up in the morning or the evening, if you wake up in the evening, if you're a night shift person, is just simply say, what am I feeling right now? How am I feeling right now? And why am I feeling that way? If I'm anxious, what am I anxious about? Do I have a big project coming up? Do I have an interview? What's making me anxious? And once you even know what's making you anxious, guess what? You're not really anxious anymore because you've addressed it. So it all comes back to you. Techniques are great, breathing, meditation, those are all quiet time. Those are all great things and they work, but they work better when you start with yourself. What am I feeling and why am I feeling that? Can I do something about it? I can't do anything about some of the chaos in the world. There's nothing I could do about it. You know, I listen very little to the news. I try to get some of the facts. But then again, we're lay people. We don't know what's fact and what isn't fact. And it's very difficult to discern unless you're actually in that situation. If you're in that situation, then you know in front of you what really is going on. So I listen to the news. I take it pretty much with a grain of salt because I don't know the whole story. And I concentrate on who I am and what I'm doing and what I can do to just stay in the present moment, to stay out of fear, and to just be myself. I'm going to turn it back over to you, Jacqueline.
Thank you. Uh, there's so much in what you said that is it gets us grounded and rooted where we need to be. And as you were speaking, I was thinking about there's a piece of sort of interrupting this catastrophic thinking that we have more with our own internal structural reality. What is that? What's our reality? And how does it line up with the other things that are happening? Because our mindset and our thinking, if it's always on the catastrophic, and we're really not dealing with, well, what's the reality for me? And that's wherever the information may be coming from. And what really sometimes we can do a little better is to ask ourselves, and you mentioned facts. What are the facts? And sometimes you may have to do a little digging or a little research because no, we really don't know what is fact and what is fiction. But sometimes it's really understanding, because if it is something that is going to impact us or we believe it might impact us, then we do need to understand what the facts are. And sometimes you may have to look a little bit, but we can get the facts. And then if we take and look at, well, okay, now that I have this information, I can digest it. I can apply it in a way that I can ask myself, do I need to take any executable steps? Is there anything that I need to do? Because fear often expands because the mind is operating without any type of structure and internal, I'm going to say, grounding. It's just operating, it's just going and going, and there's so much that's coming in. But when we create a really grounding and an anchoring for ourselves, that is going to help us with our nervous system being stabilized. And you're absolutely right. There are lots of techniques, but we also have to move from emotional reaction to, well, what is the strategic execution that I really need to apply in this situation? And guess what? Sometimes it's nothing, because sometimes there's nothing that we can do in that immediate moment. Sometimes the answer is not, what am I going to do? Do I need to take an action? Do I need to panic in any way? But it's really around, do I need to govern the thoughts that I'm having before these thoughts and all this information governs me? So it's kind of like, what's in control? Is the information controlling me? And am I reacting solely to the information? Or am I governing the information? Am I taking and really sifting through the noise and really looking at what's factual, and more importantly, what impacts us as individuals to make a decision on how we are going to react, take an action, or not? And that all comes down to really remaining mindful and processing what it is that we are taking in. And then I think another piece is to stop building identity around survival. You know, fear causes you to build your identity around survival. And one of the greatest hidden fears today is that people no longer know who they are outside of stress. They don't know who they really are outside of struggle or performance or crisis. So I really like to encourage people to intentionally reconnect with their identity, who they are at their core, beyond survival mode. And what that actually means is creating moments of stillness, engaging in creativity, that helps a lot, and reconnecting with their purpose, remembering who they were before all of this exhaustion became their sort of personality. Because fear weakens when a person remembers they are more than the chaos they have been reacting to. We just have to remember who we are. And that's the deeper work, not merely calming fear temporarily, but rebuilding a human being strong enough internally that fear no longer becomes our operating system. And I say, operating system because I came out of technology. But when we really build internally, the fear is not our operating system anymore. I pass it back to you, Teresa.
Yeah. We're built for survival. And when you look at way prehistoric times, there was constant danger
Mm,
from the environment, from animals, threats of no food. I mean, you name it, the threats were always there. And the part of our brain, the amygdala, the brain stem, was really, it's our survival mode. And it's really our, what they call the primitive brain. And unfortunately, that's what we operate off of most of the time
mm,
because our brain processes, I should say, processes easier and quickly fear and negative emotions and negative situations. It has to try harder to process positive emotions,
mhm.
positive. And that's why you get that adrenaline, that fight or flight.
Yes.
That's why a lot of times we're always in fight or flight because the brain is telling us dwell on the negative. The negative is what is reality. The
Mhm.
negative is what's going to do you harm.
Yes.
And you have to be able to survive and you have to be ready. So the way to retrain your brain is not to tell your brain, okay, I'm going to think positive thoughts. You really have to believe it. And that only starts with the heart, because the heart is where we take in and we process emotions. If we just deal with our brain, it's not going to work, because the brain flips automatically to survival mode.
Mhm.
That's what it's been doing since prehistoric times. And a brain is a computer, just like a computer,
Yes.
takes in information, gives information out. It's not able to quote unquote think. So, really, it's the heart where we take in emotions and we start to process them. And that's how we get our heart and brain on the same page.
Mhm.
So, the heart stops when you take emotions in through your heart, regardless of what they are. Okay. If you could identify that emotion and say, why am I feeling this? You turn off the stress hormones immediately, because the heart connects directly to the vagus nerve, which is the parasympathetic nervous system, which connects directly. It has a route straight up to the brain. So
Mhm.
you've got this major highway that's connecting. And if you could start in your heart, take in those emotions, and then process those emotions, you're giving yourself time. You're buying time not to be in survival mode. The brain calms down. The brain literally like goes on a pause, because you're not in survival mode. The brain is just kind of in a pause to kind of see where the heart's going to go from there. How is this something you could process right away? Maybe it's something that you could deal with or change right away. Maybe it's just something that you don't need to be involved with at all. Maybe it's not serving your best life. Maybe it's something that just causes you distress or anxiety or aggravation. So instead of sending that message up to the brain, you leave it in your heart and you deal with it. And you say, okay, X, Y, or Z, or whatever it is, it's what's causing me pain, causing me anxiety. I'm going to step away from it. I'm just not going to be involved with that anymore, because when I do, this is how it makes me feel. Voila, you're out of stress mode. Your brain has a chance with the heart then to process and keep everything calm. And sometimes you can't change things. We can't change the environment around us. So we really just have to deal with it. And that's where, like I said before, is how are you feeling now? Am I in danger? And if the answer, and it's going to be 99.9% of the time, I'm not in danger. So then why am I fearful? I can't control the outside things. I can't control the future. So why should I really think about it and dwell about it? If something happens, if the economy collapses, I can't do anything about that, in all honesty. What's ever going to happen is going to happen. I can't change the situation. All I could do is not be fearful about it. It doesn't mean that you're not concerned about it. That's not what I'm saying. I'm not saying don't be concerned, just be with yourself and that's it. What I am what I am saying is that you put it in perspective. If you can't change the situation, then don't dwell on it. That situation has to play out. And however it's going to play out is how it is. And if you look at Alcoholics Anonymous, Overeaters Anonymous, addiction, any type of addiction anonymous, they tell you to stay in the present moment, to take one moment, one day at a time, not to look ahead to the future and things that you can't control, to turn it over to a higher power. And it doesn't matter what you call that higher power. It doesn't, for the sake of this conversation, it doesn't matter what you believe or who you believe that's a higher power. It's the fact that there is a higher power, a higher source in the universe that we could give our things that we can't control and these worries over to. Because if we keep them inside of us, they just do us harm, physical, emotional, and spiritual. And that's not where we want to be. You know, if you can't change the situation, just go with the flow. You know, what else are you going to do? You can't change it. Don't sweat it. Just know that it's there. Deal with it the best you can, but don't go into fear. Don't go into anxiety because you're going to harm yourself. And that situation is going to play out like it has to play out anyway, whether or not you worried about it. And I'm going to turn it over to you now. We have a few, we're probably going to go a little over because we started late.
That's okay. As you were speaking, my mind goes to all of the Star Wars, and
Uh,
my favorite character is Yoda. And when Yoda talked about fear is the dark side, and when you break, if you take and break down all of the throughout all of the trilogies and all of the Star Wars themes, and the fear being the dark side, and if we even take a look at, because I love drawing analogies from some of these things, I don't watch things necessarily for entertainment. I watch them to find lessons learned that I can incorporate in a lot of the teaching that I do. And so, having said that, when you look at the character, a young Anakin, before he became Darth Vader, it was the fear. It was fear of loss. He was fighting for validation. He was fighting for survival. And he was actually running from uncertainty. And he was really running from himself. And that really puts us in that fight or flight mode. And we're not built to sustain operating in fight or flight all the time. That's our bodies, our nervous systems, our heart, our physical heart is not built to be under that constant every single second you're in fight flight. But I want to leave a thought: sovereign living. And that's why sovereign leadership architecture is so, I'm so passionate with it, because sovereign living requires something higher, to your point. It requires the ability to pause, to regulate, to discern, and respond instead of constantly reacting. So I'm gonna let this be my closing comment,
uh,
and pass it back to you. I think my message today to our audience is: you don't have to remain governed by fear, chaos, or emotional survival patterns. You can rebuild your internal architecture. You can reclaim your authority governing yourself, and you can become the author and the architect of your own life instead of a permanent responder to the world around you and the chaos around you. Because at the end of the day, that sovereignty, that is where freedom actually begins. I'll pass it back to you,
uh.
Teresa.
Okay, I wanted to touch on one more thing because it's a question I get asked a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And the question always is from clients, from patients, the question always is, how can I take a risk when there's
Mm-hmm.
so much uncertainty? And that's a big question. And people get a fear of, well, if I leave this behind, I hear it a lot with people that are looking to transition either into careers, maybe to retire, uh, maybe to do something different. And they come back to, well, there's so much uncertainty. How do I know to take a risk? And the answer that I give people is you know it inside of you. You know when the time is right to take that risk. And there's no guarantees. You could take a risk and something could fall apart, or you could take a risk and it could be very successful. You could do something risky and perhaps you even get hurt with it, even physically hurt if you're trying to do something risky physically, or it may be something that pushes you beyond your comfort zone, even physically, that you never thought that you would be able to do before. You just don't know. And nobody else can tell you when to take that risk, when to jump off the edge, when to jump off that cliff, so to speak. It's up to you. And sometimes people are very prepared to do it. I know people that prepare every single thing and they know exactly what they're going to do, when they're going to do it, how they're going to do it. And then there's other people that kind of just go with the flow. And when they say, okay, the time is right for me to try this, I'll try this. If the time is right for that, I'll try that. The same thing with moving. I know people that have moved on the spur of the moment because something just felt good. I have a friend that's moved numerous times, and she's never planned where she was going to move to. She just moved. One time she went on vacation someplace and she really liked it. She came home, sold her house, and moved.
Wow.
So, and she's a professional and she quit her job. She had to because she was moving many miles away from where she was, went and got another job in her profession, lived there for a while, then decided that something else would be interesting and actually moved out of the country for a while and spent time out of the country, worked in something totally different. Because when you leave the country, you can't always work in your profession. So she worked as a server because that's kind of universal. And it doesn't take, you don't have to have a lot of the credentials that you would have to have with other things. So she did that for a while. When that no longer served her, she moved back. Then she moved again for a job. She got a promotion and she moved for that. And since I've known her in the 25 years I've known her, she must have moved at least 8 times. And she's never regretted it. She's never prepared for it. She said, well, because I'm thinking about moving and I'm trying to prepare. And she said, for God's sakes, when you find something, just go. I said, but you have to do this, you have to. She said, it'll all fall into place. You worry too much. And looking back on it, when I moved from New Jersey to Alabama, I had no choice. I had to move for my husband's job. I came to another state kicking and screaming because I did not want to move. And yet it fell into place because the movers packed everything. Everything happened without me really thinking about it. Because, yes, I basically left it until the last minute. No, I didn't prepare a lot for it. So I think there's something to be said about taking a risk, about being spontaneous. And like Nike says, just do it. Sometimes I think you just have to take that risk and do it. And I'll give you time to say some last words on that because we're only like 5 minutes over. So,
Okay, thank you. There is risk without being reckless. And I'll give an example of being in my technology days. There's the leading edge, and then there's the bleeding edge. And these are just like cliches that we used to, utilize. You want to be on the leading edge, but you don't want to be necessarily on the bleeding edge because people are not going to necessarily buy into something that hasn't been fully developed. And my thought was always that risk, while not being reckless, is a good thing. And sometimes you can get on the bleeding edge. I used to say, just make sure you don't bleed out. And people will be like, what? And just make sure. Sometimes you may take a couple of little what I call paper cuts, um to, because you want to be out ahead, and you do want to be able to, as you said, just do it. But you just have to, again, this comes back to self-governance and all of the internal work that we do, so that we have that heightened level of discernment, so that we don't bleed out. And when you have that, you'll find that it may be a little challenging, but you'll find that you'll come around and you'll come out on the top side of where you really want to be. But the key, as we've been talking here, is to not let fear govern your life, because it really is, fear will really take you to the dark side. It will take you to compromising. It'll take you to a place where you'll begin to make decisions and even put your trust in situations that look glittery, but there's no gold. And so I
Yeah.
often say, don't chase the next shiny thing. We are bombarded with so much information, and everything looks shiny. Oh, I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. Oh, let me grab a little of that. Let me go do this. And sometimes when we're so fearful of failure, we're just grabbing. And when we're doing that, you're really setting yourself up for failure more than you realize. So our fear cannot be what directs our lives, because it will cause us to make some pretty poor decisions. So I
Yeah.
think, as you said, that inner listening to the heart, the discernment, we have to tap into those things and build and integrate that in with our intellect and all of, I say, our genius and our brilliance that we have to connect everything all together and integrate it together, so that we are not operating out of fear.
Yeah. And fear, when fear governs you, forget it. You get stuck and you can't do things.
Right.
And even when you look at the past, you have a couple more minutes here, and I'm just going to be really honest about something.
Hmm.
Yeah, I want to move. I didn't want to move where I am now. I had no desire. It wasn't on my bucket list at all. It's not that it's bad, there's nothing bad about it, but it's just not where I really want to be.
Hmm.
And I've been kind of back and forth, back and forth. And because I fear maybe it happening again.
Hmm.
What if I get into another place that, oh, the honeymoon phase is fine. But then once I settle there, it's not going to be that good.
Hmm.
Then does that mean I would have to move again? And when I get myself in that tape and that dialogue, it makes me fearful and it makes me stuck, where then I don't even look at, well, where would I want to move or what would be interesting? Because I think, oh my God, I want to go to the beach, but what if I go there and what if there's a hurricane? And what if, what if this, what if that, what if then I have to move? How would I move again? What if I don't like the area once I'm there? What if, all these things. And what I really have to do is just do it, come to a conclusion. What do I really want to do? And how do I really want to do it? And I think that's one reason I picked this topic about living fearlessly, because I was having a conversation with a friend who wanted to know why she thought about a year ago I was going to be moving and I haven't moved yet, and wanted to know what was up with that. And, she said, maybe you're just too fearful of it. Maybe you need to get out of that. Instead of helping other people get out of fear, maybe now you need to help yourself get out of fear. So I'm going to end with that. As usual, thank you for joining us today. I know we got a little late start. There's always some sort of, you never know with technical things. Technology for me lately has been a real challenge and a really roller coaster. Everything from my phone getting stuck into SOS mode
Wow.
and having to work with Apple for an hour and a half to get it out of SOS mode, to my iPad no longer holding a good charge.
Wow.
And now, even this morning, I couldn't get into the studio. So who knows? I think it's just maybe it's some electrical force within me that is causing all this technology to really go haywire. I don't know, but somehow everything works out in the end. And I thank everybody who joined us. I know we're a little late and we're a little over, but thank you for everything. And for those listening to the replay and watching the replay, I hope we gave you some food for thought. I hope that we really do inspire you with what we say, because that's really what the Own It platform is all about. So I'm going to take us out now. Thank you, everyone. And we will see you next week.
I